CBC News is uncovering more about the death of a Canadian soldier who told his officers he was being bullied. An investigation by the Canadian military shows his superiors did nothing to stop the harassment. A year later, the reservist killed himself. The same probe also reveals ritualized hazing and a fight club at a Winnipeg armory. CBC's Caroline Bargout has the details.
Last November, while on a training exercise at CFB Shiloh, Corporal Nolan Caribou asked to be excused to take care of something personal. Fellow soldiers were sent to look for him when he didn't return. They found him dead. A board of inquiry later revealed the reservist from Winnipeg's Minto Armouries died by suicide, a year after telling his superiors he was being bullied.
I don't know what was going through his mind or what other things he had going on in his life at the time. But it is clear to me that he was being harassed while he was in uniform, and that leaders that should have taken action didn't, and that could have contributed to his death, yes.
A military police investigation alleged soldiers were taking part in an organized fight club. 5 soldiers have since been reprimanded and a leader removed from his post.
It's a rare occasion where the military admits, in fact, there were mistakes, admits a corrective step must be taken.
Military lawyer and Ottawa law professor Michel Drapeau says the Army talking about it is a good start, but a public inquiry or coroner's inquest might lead to more change. 14 soldiers have died by suicide this year, 89 since 2014. Corporal Nolan Caribou's family has asked for privacy, but at the time of his death issued a statement saying, despite the challenges he faced in the military, he was proud to be an infantryman. Caroline Bargout, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And we did hear there from Michel Drapeau, and we do want to bring him in again on this report. He's a military lawyer and law professor at the University of Ottawa, and he retired from the Canadian Armed Forces with the rank of colonel. When a soldier dies, typically, thank you again for joining us, sir, but when a soldier dies in a non-combat situation, what typically happens next?
What typically happens in Canada is the military convenes a board of inquiry, and the board of inquiry is made up of military officers. The families who have obviously an interest in it have no standing. They may be invited to come and testify, but if they do, there will be no legal counsel. They don't have a right to have publication of the report itself, or to adduce evidence, or to present other witnesses and so on. It's done by the military, for the military, and eventually the Chief of Defence Staff will either approve or otherwise. He may sit for years. We've seen Board of Inquiries waiting 4 or 5 years before they receive the final blessing of the Chief of Defence Staff. It's totally inappropriate. And the purpose of the Board of Inquiry is to provide the military some understanding as to what has happened, perhaps allowing them to take corrective action. But it doesn't do anything on the wider scale. Hence, my claim, and I've done this for so many years now on so many occasions, that any soldiers who dies any place except on the battlefield, they should be a public inquiry, and more specifically, a coroner inquest. So you have civil society set up a coroner inquest. They are members of the public that are part of the panel itself. Military officials are asked to come and testify and be examined on it. And the purpose is not to lay blame upon the military or upon anybody. The only purpose of a coroner inquest is to find out the cause of the death, and more significantly, what can be done to prevent recurrence. So it's the only mode of accountability we have. And sorry as we are of the loss of this young man, surely lessons can be learned to prevent recurrence. And unless a public inquiry done independently, externally, but also publicly, not inside an army garrison or something, but publicly, the public can learn from it. That includes members of the military, and includes also their families. And until this is done, unfortunately, I think we'll get more of that, because I'm not sure that the lessons, get to be relearned year after year after year. I mean, we had instances of hazing and harassment in the military for as long as we had armed forces. So it's about time that we have some civilian overlook and oversight and try to bring some sanity to it.
And Mr. Drapeau, one would imagine that certainly if there was a outside body looking into this, they would probably also look at the fact that in this probe, Nathan Caribou's death, it was revealed that he had told his superiors about being bullied and harassed a year before his death. So what do you make of that in particular, that he did go to his superiors with this information that he was being harassed, and then also leading to the point that you've made that there's no outside body looking at that fact?
That's precisely the point. I mean, and there is no accountability. I mean, fundamentally, ironically, you cannot blame the military to reveal such issue. In other words, they were blameful in not listening in, not involving or interfering with his harassers and putting a stop to it. So the system failed. That's fine. And, I'm not here to advertise the fact that the military is not capable of disciplining itself and so on. It is what it is, and unfortunately, we lost the life of a young man. But what are we going to learn from it? And if we're going to learn from it by exposing it to the public, and ensuring, in fact, the military respond to the mothers and fathers whose sons and daughters are serving in the military to make it safer for them, it's been worth it. This loss will not have been in vain, as opposed to closing the books, and the only person who actually know are those who convened the board, those who've read the full report, not the redacted one, and they're going to go on, and in a year or two, these individuals will be replaced in their respective command appointments, and we're going to start over again. So my point is, we need to have the public, and when you have a public inquiry, you have media coverage. When you have media coverage, you have accountability. When you have accountability, you may just have what we don't have now, parliamentary overlook, parliamentary oversight, parliamentary interest. Because at the moment, in fact, it's the family is left to its own devices. It only got part of a story. I'm certain that the family is frustrated because they don't see what kind of mechanism, what kind of corrective action is being taken to prevent recurrence. And surely, I'm not speaking for the family, but I've seen other families in the same circumstances where the only thing they want, and the only thing that will somehow attenuate their grief, is to know that the death of their loved one was not in vain. Something was done to correct the past mistakes. Something is done to ameliorate the process. And in this case, until this is done, and believe you me, there is no reason why a public inquest cannot be done, despite having had a board of inquiry. They serve two separate purposes. We can have both. And for as long as the military wants to do its own board of inquiry, let them have it. It's an internal, in-camera inquiry that they have, but the public, the family, public interest demands that we have a public accounting, and that can be done, should be done, through a coroner inquest.
Now, I did finally want to ask you on something that you had touched on. You said that instances of hazing aren't all that uncommon. And in this investigation, they also made mention of a revelation of a sort of fight club that was in existence at the Armouries in Winnipeg. How uncommon is that? Or is this the first you've heard of something similar to a fight club existing like this?
Well, something, yes, but it takes various color and various characteristics. But I mean, we've heard about that. The public has. CBC reported about a year or so ago Mr. Beamish, who basically put allegations, the fact that he and many of his younger colleagues in Wainwright about a decade or so ago went through some form of hazing as part of his recruit training. We've seen something similar during the Somali inquiry, where the Airborne Regiment was involved in some hazing rituals. It's not uncommon in many fraternal type of organization, and certainly the Army is not immune from it. Both the Canadian Forces and many other forces in the world are. And the best antidote and the best corrective method to that is public disclosure, public accountability, media vigilance, and I say again, which we are lacking here, is parliamentary oversight, and we don't have it. So until we do, and until members of the forces, not the leadership necessarily, but members of the forces know that if they do this, there'll be a price to pay. If they do this, it will be exposed. If they do this, somebody will be held accountable. There may be a relapse of a year or two, and then a new generation comes along, and we start over again. And in this case, we lost a young man which was a totally unnecessary loss of life, and we need to do something to prevent recurrence.
Well, it's an important story, and we sincerely appreciate you joining us to shed some light on this topic. Thank you to you, Michel Drapeau. That is retired Colonel and military lawyer Michel Drapeau in Ottawa.